Would you call this an MPV? Or would you call that an MPV? The Force Urbania. It's longer, wider, and can sit 3 more people than the 7-seater version of the Innova Hi-Cross. But it has one thing in common. As you can see, they're both on white number plates, which means they can be privately owned. So should you consider this if you need an MPV? Well, we're going to use our ride performance and handling tests to answer that question.
We're starting with the acceleration tests this time around, and it's a pretty easy win for the Innova Hi-Cross here. In fact, we've had to drop our performance test numbers from 0 to 100 kmph to 0 to 98 kmph because this test Urbania has been electronically limited to 100 km per hour and actually can only get up to 98 kmph. And it takes over twice the time to reach 90 kmph than the Innova Hi-Cross. As you can imagine, the Urbania is a lot heavier than the Innova, and so it actually takes a massive 8 meters more to come to a stop from 100 kmph and 5 meters more to come to a stop from 80 kmph than the Innova Hi-Cross. Mind you, these are unloaded figures for both, and you should be more cautious when driving with full loads in both MPVs as these distances will increase significantly. More than the ride quality, we thought a more significant test should show how much of a difference the increase in size makes to the maneuverability of the Urbania compared to the Hi-Cross. First, we pull a U-turn in this narrow dual carriageway, using the full breadth of the road and making sure the wheels don't cross the white lines. While both managed a simple 3-point turn, the Urbania's length limits how much it could back up in this test, and hence it can't make as tight a turn as the Innova Hi-Cross. More telling is the slalom test. Here the agility of the Innova Hi-Cross is evident, both from the quicker time as well as how much more of the road the wider and longer Urbania needed to complete the test without knocking down more than the one cone.
So on to the cornering test then, and unfortunately with the Innova Hi-Cross, we had a tear in one of the sidewalls on the rear tires, so we didn't really want to risk running the corner again, but we have run the Hi-Cross at this very same corner before, and we'll show you what those runs look like.
So at 60 kmph, the Innova Hi-Cross kept things neat and tidy. Nothing to complain about here. At 65 kmph though, it starts to understeer wide. The tail also stepped out a little bit and it clips the first 2 cones.
And with the Force Urbania at the cornering test, we're going to look at 2 runs, one at 60. The first run, well, that was quite stable. It held a nice tight line, not too much body roll in that either. So 60 kilometers per hour, good run. Moving things on then to 65 kmph with the Force Urbania. And again, a very nice tight line, stayed very stable, quite surprising, and a bit of an anticlimax. We thought there would be a lot more drama in that run.
With the Urbania, we didn't want to push things any further. In fact, in both runs, ESP was kicking in hard, braking the inner wheels and keeping things nice and composed. More speed just wouldn't make any sense.
So the first thing you really have to talk about when talking about the driving experience in the Urbania is the size. There's no getting around of it. It is wider and longer than probably most everything that most of you have driven. The first thing that you really have to take care of is the front left wheel is actually probably a foot wider than where you're used to it being. So you need to account for a little more space on the left side of the road when you're passing vehicles or pedestrians, just to be on the safe side. The next thing, of course, you need to take care of is the length. So when you're taking turns, your rear wheels actually kind of take a sharper turn. So you need to give yourself more room to clear an obstacle or a corner of a wall when you're taking a turn, especially in parking lots. Speaking of parking lots, of course, That's another thing you really need to consider, is its height and its width. Not many parking lots will be able to fit an Urbania into them. Once you do get used to the dimensions and get used to driving the Urbania, it really is not very much of a different experience. The steering is a little on the heavier side, but everything else, the brakes, the clutch, the gear shifter is pretty normal. And we've spent a few days driving it both in the city of Pune and on the outskirts, and we haven't had to do too much of recalibration of the way we drive. There's one more thing that we have noticed, and that there seems to be an expectation of how you are expected to drive on the road by your other fellow road goers. So because it's a big vehicle that kind of looks like a bus or a transport vehicle, we have noticed that people are expecting you to drive in that similar manner. So calm and collected, not changing lanes too much, not overtaking a lot. And that's really great, because that's the best way to drive the Urbania. When it's calm and collected, it's an easy-going experience. We'll delve a little bit on the performance. So it's a 2.6 diesel engine, the same engine you get in the Gurkha. However, the tune is slightly different. So it's a little down on power, but more torque. And how it is to drive? Well, on the highway, it's very easy to keep to speeds of 80 to 90 kilometers per hour. And in the city, it has more than enough grunt to keep up with traffic, which is pretty much all you'll need in a car like this. And just a short word on efficiency. On the highway, we've been seeing around 14 to 15 kilometers per litre, and in the city, that drops down to about 9 to 10 kilometers per litre. In terms of refinement, well, the diesel is not the most refined engine you'd have around. You can hear it when you're doing about 2000, 3000 RPM. When you're revving it up a bit, it is audible in the cabin. In terms of road noise and general noise from the suspension, it is fairly well insulated. The Urbania rides surprisingly well for a car of this size and weight. That's down to a lot of things that are in its favor. It's got a long wheelbase, so that's able to absorb a lot of the undulations of the road, which you don't really feel. What you do feel are the sharper bumps. They get through the cabin and you can hear them as well. But keep in mind that we have been testing the Urbania only with very light loads. When you load this up with people and luggage, that ride quality is going to get only better.
Speaking of people and luggage, the non-commercial Urbania can seat 9+1 and can be had in both the short wheelbase and medium wheelbase versions. With all of those 9 seats able to fit full-size adults in equal comfort, with AC vents, charge ports and cup holders for everyone.
So to sum up our day's events, and of course the Innova Hi-Cross won our performance tests, so the acceleration and braking tests. But what was surprising was how close the Urbania came to the Hi-Cross in our maneuverability tests. And then we had the cornering test, and the Urbania managed the same speed as the Innova Hi-Cross but left all those cones standing. And so yes, it's an unsurprising win for the Innova Hi-Cross. But what is an eye-opener is how close the Urbania came to it in terms of its driving experience. It really is a very easy car to get along with in the way it drives, rides and handles. And it really does ask you to make just a few allowances, one, finding parking that's big enough for it, if you do want to go down that road. Yes, we do know it is only going to fit a handful of buyers. But if you do have a large family who likes to travel, then it really is worth your consideration. And lastly, would you dream of taking this untrodden path? And if you did, would you leave it as is or go down the customization route? I've left my dream spec for the Urbania in a pinned comment. And if you've reached this far in the video, go and reply to it with your dream spec. And of course, like, subscribe and share. And I'll catch you in the next one.